Hollywood isn't just about movies. It's about narratives, both on screen and off. The ongoing legal battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has put a spotlight not only on defamation law, but also on the powerful public relations machinery that shapes celebrity reputations. How much of what we believe is influenced by the PR campaigns rather than the truth? This is Beyond the First. From the basement studios of WSOE at Elon University, this is Beyond the First, a podcast where we explore the intersection of media law, ethics, and real-world impact. I'm your host, Israel Balderas, and in this series, we're diving deep into the legal and ethical dilemmas shaping the media landscape today. Now, for today's episode, we're going to visit again what's happening with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. I call it the drama, the litigation drama. But today we're going to be talking about the Hollywood and the PR angle. You know, when high-profile lawsuits unfold, legal arguments are only part of the story. Media strategies, crisis PR, and public perception play an equally crucial role. How do celebrities and their teams control narratives? And how does the court of public opinion influence legal outcomes? Joining me today, I've got Lily Shao, Georgia Brucato, who are both students of mine in media law and ethics. And today I'm so excited because we got a special guest, a celebrity, a podcaster celebrity, Jennifer Nassour. You have your own podcast, and you do these kinds of deep dives into how media is influenced by culture, by politics, by news, and you're also a former journalist, right?
I am currently on TV as a political analyst, and yes, I have a podcast called Political Contessa.
And your daughter is?
Georgia.
Georgia, does it feel weird that I invited your mom to come on this podcast? Or did you love it?
I love it. I love talking to her. Before this, we were going through all of my notes from the class, and I was reading through everything, and we were just having casual discussions about everything that she thought and all the different lawsuits and cases. So I love this type of stuff, and I love this conversation, so it's nice to have her here.
And I love the fact she's a political analyst, so she understands sometimes how the PR machine behind the scenes can influence how the public perceives this. All right, so here's my first question, and I'll just throw it out there. Do you all think the public ever gets the full truth in a celebrity lawsuit, or are PR campaigns too powerful to overcome? Anybody can take that.
So I think that the PR campaigns are honestly incredibly effective, especially in this day and age where everyone has technology and everyone has some sort of social media. In our age, in me and Lily's generation, we see a lot of TikToks where we get misguided information. And before this, we were kind of talking about how our perception on Blake Lively did change during the smear campaign. Very much. Before that, we said she was out of all the drama. We never saw any of these interviews, but as soon as the smear campaign happened, it was all over my TikTok For You page, and kind of the main source of topic and information that we were getting was from there. So it was incredibly effective for me, at least.
You know, Lily, I'm a huge Marvel fan. So that means I love Ryan Reynolds. I love Deadpool, right? And the movie Deadpool Wolverine came out, and I was like, this is fantastic. And then I started reading the articles that maybe Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were having an affair. And then I found out about what the PR machine had been doing between August and October. And I went back to look at all the articles, and I went, oh my gosh, even someone like me, a journalist, somebody who verifies, right, the truth, I fell into it. And I was like, wow. How easily can the public be manipulated?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like definitely in terms of getting the full truth, I don't think in a case like this the public will ever know the full truth. Like Hollywood itself, I feel like prides itself on like misinformation and like blowing things out of proportion. Like that's their whole, or majority of their whole industry, like to get attention is like really hyping up situations like this to a point of where it's not even true anymore. And I feel like a lot of like what I've seen from the like PR campaign and just videos of Blake Lively like resurfacing like her old interviews and like clips of her where she like trying to make her look bad, but it's always painted in a way of like they'll take like a 1-second clip from something and it never tells you the full story. And I feel like this whole campaign and whole like just the coverage of this case in general, I feel like a lot of it is like that, like kind of taken out of context, at least what I've seen.
Jennifer, you have been a journalist and a political analyst. I don't know about you, but I never liked interviewing celebrities, right? Give me a senator, give me a president, right? I'll cover that. And the reason I never covered Hollywood is because I always thought there was sort of a fakeness to it. And then I start seeing what's going on, and I'm like, boy, you don't know the half of it. Did you ever experience something like this, either as a journalist or now as a political analyst?
My whole entire existence has been with politicians. So, you know, you want to talk about something that's a fake world of things that are made up and PR machines. I mean, that's basically everything that I've dealt with. I can't even imagine. And I think that, you know, what Lily was saying is exactly true. And I think that that's one of the things that we see a lot of. And I feel like with the rise of social media over the last decade, really what we get is snippets. We never seem to get the full story. And what also I've seen, and you being a former journalist, maybe this is something that you agree with and maybe it's horrifying, but I think that journalists have also become incredibly lazy because they can get their information just like everyone else is getting their information. And so instead of doing the deep dive that journalists used to do and reporters used to do, it's just so much easier to say, oh, wait, I got this. Let's just take this and go with it. And there are things like in state houses around the country where budgets have been slashed for media, where you see same thing in Congress when you see national news networks. They just don't have the manpower anymore. And so you get more information off the AP wire than you do local reporters on the beat getting the information. So I absolutely agree. You know, you get that small little snippet and you don't get the whole story, which I think is really problematic because it's left open to your own personal interpretation, and whichever PR machine is bigger and better, that's the side that wins.
Mm-hmm. You know, Georgia, in a couple of episodes, we've had some of your colleagues come in and say, look, this whole TikTok fiasco thing, right, of the government trying to either let it go dark or be sold, impacted me directly because I got all my news from TikTok, right? They weren't going to CNN. They're not even going on the internet. And yet, we know from our talks of privacy that on TikTok or on X or on Meta, all of that information can be manipulated doing the algorithm. So how will the law of defamation now work in an area where we can manipulate the algorithms, the data, that they can harm persons right to the edge of harm to reputation, but we didn't cross the line?
Yes. So I think it's difficult in Blake Lively's situation and in Justin Baldoni's because they're both all-purpose like public figures. And so everything that goes on in their lives are much more public than us. And right before this, again, we were just having this discussion. And if any of this happened with any of us in this room, it wouldn't be broadcasted as much as it is. But it's because there are these public figures that everyone knows what's going on in their lives. Everyone, like, especially with the media coverage, and I guess I would relate this to the Heard versus Depp trial. Everyone tuned in to watch that. There was so much media coverage. Everyone was discussing it, and everyone had their own opinions without knowing the full story. And once again, like, this is a dilemma of gender because in both situations, it's a man and a female. And I feel like the female is getting the bad end of the stick. And just like in Depp versus Heard, I was getting all my information via media rather than news sources. And it was everyone just bashing on her, bashing on a woman who went through a terrible experience. And I think after kind of watching the documentary and seeing
And the documentary Depp versus Heard on Netflix.
Yes.
Because I make you all watch that.
Yes. So after watching that documentary, I think it's kind of clear to understand how manipulative it can be being a celebrity, and how people kind of do have to bow down to you and do as you say. And there's not really a way around it, especially in a situation where it's Depp versus Heard, where it's a very well-known actor. Everyone's coming to this trial just to be in the same room as someone who is of celebrity status, and then they're bashing on the woman. And same in this situation, I feel like Blake Lively, once again, we don't know the full story. I think it's hard to determine who was in the right, I guess, at this point in time when they're both bashing at each other. But I just think that she got a terrible end of the stick, and everyone is bashing on her. And also, like, I will admit, my opinions were completely changed on her as well. So,
Lily, I've been angry for the last 3 years when it comes to the Depp versus Heard case, right? Because I come into class and I go, hey, students, I'm going to prove to you that, A, Johnny Depp should not have won that case, right? Here are the elements of defamation. I think that he could make these elements, but even if he did, Amber Heard would have this defense of truth, right? And opinion. But I remember in media law and ethics, we were watching the case live the way Georgia was describing it. And we were watching in real time, sort of like team Johnny and team Heard and the bashing. That was the first time I saw how social media could be manipulated. And now I go, oh, this is like Depp versus Heard times 100. Am I exaggerating and making these comparisons? What do you think?
I don't think so. The Depp versus Heard case was really interesting to me because I will admit, while it was going on, I saw a ton of TikToks on it, but that was really my only source of information on the case. I didn't take the time to really do a deep dive into the documentary or any of the legal documents.
Do you remember if you were either
watching,
team Johnny?
Oh, I totally was.
Were you really?
Yes,
I was too,
because
I remember.
Were you?
it was all over. My every video I saw was only in support of him. It was never in support of her.
Mm-hmm.
And after watching the documentary, especially just the hard evidence that was in that documentary, the videos of him, the text messages, the timeline, all of that was never shown to me on TikTok until I watched that documentary. So after seeing all that hard evidence, my opinions totally changed. And I now am much more in favor of Amber Heard, and I think she definitely was not given the credit of going through this terrible thing. Seeing those videos, that would be awful for anybody.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the side of the story that was broadcasted. It was Johnny's side of the story.
And Jennifer, I admit my bias, right? I'm a feminist. I was raised by a single mother, right? I know exactly that I'm going to side with Amber Heard. And this was during the Me Too movement, right? So I was totally on the Amber Heard side. But now you look at the Blake Lively issue, and, the Me Too movement is not as powerful. But this now involves also Ryan Reynolds, right? Because Ryan Reynolds was part of the conversation as to what kind of hostile work environment was happening on the set of the movie It Ends With Us. And it involves Marvel, and it involves the New York Times. Are we seeing now the rise of all powerful people being able to manipulate both the law, the culture, and the news?
Yeah, I mean, so, going back to when the Me Too movement was starting in 2016, and I said, well, finally, it took all this time for this to come up. But, you had people like Gwyneth Paltrow coming forward and saying about Harvey Weinstein's bad behavior and, bringing women, opening his hotel room door in his robe. What a scary sight. And, Gwyneth Paltrow walking in and not knowing what she was going into. And you say, what she didn't know, right? But at the same time, it was really this culture in a lot of our businesses of, the powerful man saying, come meet me here. And do I dare say I'm not coming in? And does that cost me my career? It's the Matt Lauer go into his office and locking the door from underneath his desk,
Right.
and what he did to young women. And that is really, truly reprehensible. Unfortunately, memories are short. And I think that people forget all of that. And I think in this situation, her husband was on set. I think that there are arguments to be made for both. She has been incredibly credible in her career. She's a mom. She's got 4 kids. They've been married for a long time. You wonder, is it jealousy because she's beautiful and successful and they look like the perfect couple? But at the same time, her husband was on set. They were driving a narrative on the movie and how things should go. When you hear the audio that, when he was wearing a mic and them dancing close, it does make you wonder. And so I think that it is a celebrity machine. I mean, Baldoni's suing the New York Times for $250 million. He's suing Blake and Ryan for $400 million. Like, those are you're never going to see that money. It's just crazy.
And I didn't know who Justin Baldoni was.
At all. No one knew.
Right? So I'm like, listen, if you think your reputation has been harmed, right, Georgia? I mean, okay, is it really worth almost $1 billion? But going back to what you were saying, we know that Hollywood tends to go after that narrative that, if a woman, has anger issues, right, that's because of her emotions. But if a man is tough, he's a leader. And in this case, you've got a power couple like Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively who are successful in not only Hollywood, but in business, right? Ryan Reynolds has sold businesses. So how much of the Hollywood hate machine and jealous machine is also part of this conversation?
A tremendous amount. Like I said, it's jealousy,
Okay.
right? I mean, I think that that has a lot to do with it of, she's gorgeous, he's gorgeous, Ryan and Blake, and they look like they have everything together. And is it that, why should they have everything? And going back to what you were saying, no one knew this is the best PR for Justin Baldoni. Baldoni, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know what the hell his last name is. I mean, that's how little I've ever thought of this guy. The fact that he had his own production company and he was dropped by his agent. Who cares?
Right.
But I think a bigger issue here is the he said, she said, the going against a power couple, are we going to see more of this? Is that what's going to happen? Is Tom Cruise going to be attacked by, someone that he's on a movie with next? Or, how is this all going to shape out in the future?
Good point.
With the outcome of this lawsuit.
Yeah. And, to Jennifer's point, Georgia, certainly every time we have a case, it changes things, right? The Amber Heard, the Johnny Depp thing changed things. The Me Too movement changed things. What do you think? What is this going to do to both how we see Hollywood and then the issues of law and then how we can manipulate both in that digital space we've been talking about?
Well, I think Hollywood and celebrities have caught on to the fact that everything that they say or put out there, it affects our generation tremendously, because I will go to my mom and say something and she's like, that's not true. Like, have you read the actual facts of it? And I think we're just a little too lazy to keep digging, and TikTok is, once again, our main source of information. I know for me and both my little sisters and all my friends will all come together and kind of have the same opinions until I have a discussion or until this class and kind of talking about the actual morals and ethics of it all. So in this specific situation, I'm not quite sure about the outcome, but I do know that celebrities now know that they can easily twist our minds and opinions just based on social media and claims they make, because I know I wouldn't have been this invested if it wasn't all over my social media and it wasn't such a productive conversation that was going on. I think legally, I'm not sure. This might change the laws of defamation in a sense of celebrities shouldn't get the same. It's difficult. I don't know if celebrities should get the same treatment as normal people, because once again, if someone were to say any of this stuff about us, no one really cares that much. But if you say something about a celebrity, that ruins their career, it ruins their reputation, it ruins everything about them. And people are we never know the full truth. No one knows the truth about anyone. So I just think this is a really hard situation, and some new laws definitely have to come into play when dealing with Hollywood and celebrities, but I know that they often manipulate the laws a lot.
But Lily, not everyone is like Georgia, right? That they have a mom who's a journalist who is, very smart, and she's out there and she can tell Georgia, you need to be media literate on this. So what happens to the rest of the public that does live in the shorts? How do they get educated? You know this because you went to my class, but not everybody's doing that.
Yeah, before taking this class, I feel like I was one of those people. Like, I would have taken what I saw on TikTok or something, and for instance, these cases, I would have just taken in the content that was given to me through Instagram or through TikTok or whatever platform, and I would have just believed that. I wouldn't have gone out on my own time and done more research into the facts of these things, more deep digging into the legal issues of it. That's what happened to me with the Depp versus Heard case. I only viewed the side of the story that was presented to me, and I didn't take the time to really dig deeper and learn more about it. So I feel like there's a lot. I think that's a huge problem with people today. They're not getting their news from reliable sources. TikTok, sure, there's real news stations on there that are providing news, but there's also a lot of people that are providing fake information and displaying it as the truth. Mm-hmm. So people who don't take the time to really research these issues, they'll never know the full story, and they'll never know what's true and what's not.
And Jennifer, we're talking about Hollywood, we're talking about the AI influence in news, but we can't leave the politics out of this. And I'm glad you're here because let's bring in the politics of it. Now we've got a new president in the White House. Donald Trump is now again the president. 47th president, and he has been very vocal about the defamation laws, right? He's been out on the campaign trail. He's told, the MAGA world, we're going to open up these defamation laws. We're going to be able to sue. And we've already seen the impact that, there's been settlements between Donald Trump suing ABC because George Stephanopoulos, accused him of rape rather than sexual assault, which is what he was accused of in New York. And then we've got a couple of Supreme Court justices who have said, like Georgia, maybe we need to rethink this whole New York Times versus Sullivan. So how is all of this going to impact how we as journalists, how others cover Trump when anything that is said about him in a negative way, boom, he uses social media to go after people? Are we going to see even more of this in the next 4 years?
Well, I'm a lawyer, and so constitutional law was one of my favorite classes, and First Amendment and right to free speech, and I consistently quote that is our right to free speech, and thank God we live in America and we have that. And I've been in politics my entire existence, and I believe that if you hold yourself out as a public persona, a public official or a celebrity, it's a different rule that applies to you than applies to us. It's a broader standard than it is for us because
that higher level, right?
It's
Actual malice,
right?
yeah.
Because you put yourself out there, whereas we didn't as private citizens, and so when you open yourself up to more criticism by being in that position. And I think if honestly, I've done a podcast on this before. We've become a very soft society. And I think that's one of the issues is that, Trump, as much of a macho man as he pretends or puts on, you can't go around and say, hey, I'm suing everyone. Because I think that's one of the problems that we see in America.
Very
and
litigious
in tort law,
society.
Very litigious society, and being very soft on issues because it hurts our feelings and it doesn't make us feel good. Well, you know what? Get some gumption and don't do anything wrong, and then it won't be an issue. And so it'll be interesting to see if it rises up to the level of the Supreme Court where anything is changed to broaden it. But I think, you do, like Georgia was saying, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, to what he was saying, when you ruin someone's reputation in that world, you're costing them their entire career,
Their livelihood,
right? And that's a lot more than oh, you don't like what I said on my podcast. I always say, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It's a slightly different standard.
Yeah. Georgia, Lily, you get the last word. What do you all think?
I agree with that. I think how it's just so difficult to raise things to the Supreme Court level where a change will actually be made. But I do think that they get the short end of the stick because, once again, their lives are completely ruined. That's what they do for a living. That's how they support their families. And yes, they have the money, but once again, you're costing them everything, causing people to hate you that you don't even know, who don't even know your full story. So I don't know if things will ever be changed, but I think for their sake, it would be a good thing.
Lily?
Yeah, I just think this sort of cancel culture that's become so big, not only on TikTok, it's become so big everywhere. These celebrities can get in trouble for the smallest little thing. This Blake Lively case is obviously a much bigger deal, but people have their careers have been ruined over much smaller details and mistakes than this. And I just think it's so important, especially now with the amount of media coverage and things and everything. These celebrities are on camera taking pictures are taken of them everywhere every second. They unfortunately have kind of zero room for error, and I think it's just something that they have to accept if they're going to be part of this world. Unfortunately, these cases and things like that, your career could get ruined at any second, and it's really scary, but that's true. It's the truth.
Lily, Georgia, Jennifer, thank you so much. Now you know why I have so much fun with my students.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, I love it. And, the intersection of Hollywood, media influence, and the legal system, plus politics, continues to shape public perception, often blurring the lines between reality and spin. And it's a reminder that what we see in the headlines is rarely the full story. All right, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Beyond the First. That's it. That's season 1, 10 episodes. By the way, we recorded all 10 episodes in one day. I know. I don't know what I was thinking. By the way, if you found these conversations engaging, you know what? Go back. Listen to all the episodes because I have some awesome students and they know what they're talking about. We'll be back with season 2. That would be next winter term. Until then, stay curious and keep the conversation going.